Hello, scholars, and welcome again to our exploration of feudal Europe. Today, we're going to be looking at feudalism as the legitimate system of government for the time. To begin our conversation, I want to once again look at this lord and vassal relationship because this is the key to making feudalism work. Early in this feudal relationship system, the land belonged to the king. Okay, it always belonged to the king. But initially, that land reverted back to the king's control on a regular interval, whenever one of two things happened. One, if the king died and we had a new king, the land reverted back to the king's control. And two, if the vassal died, say a count, that count died, the land again reverted back to the king's control. Now, the king could decide just reissue that land to that vassal, and homage and fealty were done to solidify that relationship. But it didn't have to go that way. The vassal could be removed from the land if that was the wish of the lord. Now, this created certain conflicts within feudal Europe. When a lord tried to remove a powerful vassal from their land, they risked that vassal saying no, raising their army and raising rebellion against their lord. And sometimes these vassals were as powerful or nearly as powerful as their king. This example here of France around 1180 is an example. The king had this blue area right here, but these guys were more powerful, wealthier than the king themselves. Okay, France had actually set it up that way intentionally. Over time, that king, though, is going to grow to be more powerful than his vassals. But powerful vassals were really a threat to the king. And this kind of interfered with the king's authority. And over time, these vassals were able to use their power and their authority and their wealth to negotiate a better deal. How they negotiated their better deal was to create hereditary vassalage. Throughout the medieval period, you see hereditary titles becoming more and more common. In some places, it happens almost right away. In other places, it takes a long time. But whenever possible, these powerful vassals would attempt to gain inheritance rights for their family. This guy here is an example. This is Robert the Bruce. I'm sorry, I meant to. Here we go. This is Robert the Bruce. This is one of England's most powerful vassals, and he had held a hereditary vassalage for 7 generations and being in charge of large areas of Scotland, and will eventually use his power and influence as a powerful vassal to wage war on England and fight for Scottish independence. So this is simply one example. This new custom did have this tendency to weaken central control of the kingdom. Your vassals are going to grow more distantly related to the king. And this is a disadvantage in some ways, but it also had some other advantages. One of the key advantages here is that despite this weakness of central control, more nobles are going to view the king's power as legitimate. They're going to see the king as having a right to rule because the king is not a threat to their power. With that personal power secure, the king's vassals then are not as worried about securing their own power, fighting against their own king. Are going to turn their attentions outward into those things that are going to strengthen the kingdom as a whole. This is going to be one of those things that slowly, and I mean very slowly, moves Europe toward a system of the rule of law. It starts to appear in these feudal contracts. This absolute authority of the king, the absolute control of the king, starts to be whittled away. You see this more, though, with his vassals to begin with, the lords and the knights. Lords are expected to uphold any of these feudal contracts that they make with somebody. So if land becomes hereditary, then that's the deal. It's hereditary land, and the lord can't interfere with that. And if a dispute ever arises because a lord and, say, a knight disagree over this previous contract, they can then take that contract to the authority of the king or another powerful lord and have that other powerful lord or king negotiate that contract or really see who's at fault, whose position is the right position, and work from it from there. Where this system initially has trouble is with kings, whose authority is equal to or greater than the king. Within most feudal societies, nobody's was. So if your conflict was with the king himself, at least initially, you're kind of out of luck. We'll look and see in a few lessons how the English approach that particular problem and take that king's authority and start to lessen it a little bit. But that's for a future lesson. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.